Good evening to Mpuma Kapa TV viewers, listeners of Ngqubela FM. I'm welcoming you to our program as Amaqhawe Ethu Foundation. Tonight we are here in Bay World to hosting Mr. Lindinxiwa Mahlasela, umpicoti wembali, a researcher of history, who's going to be talking to us about the maritime industry, who's going to be talking to us about the sinking of SS Mendi, where we lost many heroes, where we lost lots of treasured family members that went to fight a battle that was foreign to our cause. I'd like you to welcome him as Amaqhawe Ethu, that he comes in and share this rich history that we have as South Africans, and share this rich industry that we have as the metro. Mr. Mahlasela, he's going to be talking to us about opportunities that are in the maritime industry. He's going to be talking to us about the history of the maritime industry and everything that he can share from his perspective as a history researcher. Welcome him in your homes. My name is Yongamela Manene. I'm standing in for Monga Peter. Amaqhawe Ethu ayanamkela.
Good evening. A portion of Bay World Museum's Maritime Hall is dedicated to the story of SS Mendi, our own Titanic. Many people know about a movie called Titanic, which sank in 1912, killing a number of people. But there is not so much knowledge about South Africa's own Titanic, which is SS Mendi, which happened on the 21st of February, 1917. And so with this month, February, and especially the 21st of February, which is dedicated and is called an Armed Forces Day, as the museum, together with Amaqhawe Ethu Foundation, we decided to share this story, which is our heritage, about what happened on the morning of 21st February 1917, where about 607 black people who went to war in Europe during the First World War. So what happened to their lives? How did these people die? So we try to unearth the story and make it known to the people of the province and the people of the Bay. First, the story begins with the outbreak of the First World War in 1914. And so this war happens in Europe, European countries, England, France on one hand, are fighting against Germany and her allies on the other hand. But how does South Africa get involved in a war that was happening in Europe, thousands of kilometers away? South Africa was drawn to this war because South Africa was a colony of Britain or England. So 2 years after the war, and this is 1916, the British government makes a request to South African government, which was formed in 1910 and led by General Louis Botha, who was the prime minister, that he must recruit 10,000 black people to come over to Europe to assist them in their fight against the German forces. And so Botha and his parliament accepted the request and engaged magistrates and prominent people in the country, black people, and asked them to recruit their countrymen to go and fight in Britain. And so this force of black people were called South African Native Labour Corps. Primarily, their duty was to work. That's how it's framed. They were there to work in order to support the war front. So they would be working in hospital, they would be working in dungeons where soldiers were hiding and fighting. So they would be cleaning the dungeons, feeding the soldiers, cutting wood, working as nurses, and various kinds of jobs that were available at the time. And so they recruited this 10,000 South African native labor force to go and fight in Britain. And so they were going to be divided into platoons, and they will be led, of course, just like in any other sector in South Africa at the time. They were to be led, each platoon of 2,000 blacks was to be led by white officers. And they were given contracts, which included they will be away from their families for 12 months. So 2 weeks would be for training in Cape Town, in Rosebank, and then a month or a little bit more than a month would be shipping, because in those days, sailing to Europe would take about 6 weeks. And then they would start working there, and same thing on their return. 2 weeks waiting for boarding the ship and sailing back, and all that was fitted into 12 months contract. And then, of course, they would be paid a monthly income, and there was also a provision in their contracts that in case of death, they will be paid a lump sum. I think it was about 150 pounds. We were not using rands then. Rands only came in 1961. So we were using pounds, the British currency. And so the recruitment adverts were issued in magistrates and small towns all around South Africa, including Lesotho, Swaziland, and Botswana, and people were encouraged to volunteer. And chiefs, teachers, black teachers, were key in this recruitment drive. And so people began to volunteer that I would like to go. I would like to go. Now there are various reasons as to why people went there. The first one was, of course, money. They were going to be paid. And what was offered was much better than what they were getting in their various jobs. Some were working in farms, some in factories and being exploited there, some in the mines in Kimberley and Joburg. In fact, others working as teachers even volunteered to go because the salary was much better. The second reason was curiosity. Many people, just like now, were excited about going to Europe to see the cities like London, Paris, Amsterdam, Lisbon, and so on and so forth. So it was at all, especially the young people who volunteered. And people from the inland who had never seen the ocean, it was an opportunity for them to see the ocean. And so those are some of the reasons why people began to volunteer to go and fight in Europe. And so they gathered in those who were recruited and enlisted, they gathered in Cape Town and underwent some military training. There was an expectation that there would be casualties. After all, it was a war. So they underwent basic military training for about 2 weeks in Cape Town, and then they were boarded. So with this story, SS Mendi, they left Cape Town on the 16th of January. And this is the model of the ship, SS Mendi. It looked like this. And as you can see, this was not a passenger ship to be used by people. It was converted into a passenger ship because of the demands of the war. So they boarded it. So it was smaller, just to start with, and fitted to accommodate these people who were taken to Europe to fight. So they left Cape Town on the 16th of January and got to Plymouth in England. And this map shows it here, if you're able to come closer, on the 20th of February. But because they were posted in France, in Le Havre, the ship moved in the early hours of the morning on February 21st on its way to France. And now they were going to cross the English Channel on their way to Le Havre. And disaster struck in the early hours of the morning at about 5 a.m. So this is what happened. First, in Europe in February, it's winter. They're in the middle of winter. That's the first thing. Secondly, on this particular morning, there was mist, inkungu. That's what we call it. So the vision of the captains who were navigating the ship was not so clear. And so, just like with road traffic, there are rules that apply to ships under those conditions. The first one being that periodically the ships that are at the sea, they must blow their horns to indicate to other ships that they are in the area, and so they must be careful about collisions. That's number one. Number two is the signals that they must be sending out, like lighting, to indicate again to other ships that we are here. But because this was a wartime period, there was fear that adhering to the rules would attract opposition, the enemy, in this case, the German submarines. So SS Darrow, the ship that struck Mendi, did not adhere to the rule. And so it did not indicate to other ships that it was here. First, it was not slowing down, it was moving at full steam, while SS Mendi adhered to the rules at moving at a slow pace. And so SS Darrow struck Mendi at about 5 a.m. in the morning, right in the middle. And breaking her like this, as it happened to the Titanic that I referred to earlier, right in the middle, and this is how SS Mendi sank. The boat, where it was struck, it moved like this into the water, and this was quite quick because SS Darrow was a large commercial ship. So the impact was quite heavy, and there was just no chance for SS Mendi to survive. What made this situation even worse was that there was not enough lifeboats on SS Mendi. There were much fewer. I mean, you have this ship with 800, just over 800 people, and they relied, and there were groups, and each group relied on one lifeboat, like more than 200 people relying on one lifeboat. And of course, they did have vests, but what made the situation even worse was that it was winter and the water was cold and icy. So yes, people came out and tried to swim, but they just froze. So that's how many people died in that ship. It's not that they were hit or anything, but they just could not withstand the icy waters of Europe at the time. So here at the museum, we have the list of those people who died in that war. And how we indicated it is that we have those who came from the Eastern Cape written in blue. As you can see here, we have people from Mvaba, from Queenstown, from Kutsolo, Ektua, and so on and so forth. But there is something that I would like to correct from some people. There is a belief out there that the majority of people who died on the SS Mendi tragedy are the people who are coming from the Eastern Cape. That is not entirely true. Here, over 292 of them came from Transvaal. And Transvaal at the time was made out of Gauteng, Limpopo, Northwest, no, not Northwest, but Mpumalanga. I don't know the other province. Only 77 came from the part that was called Transkei. 77. 26 from Lesotho. And I just wanted to clear that. But how is this story, or rather, let me start here. So we have an artist impression of what happened during this tragedy. Here we see SS Mendi who was sinking, and we are looking at people who are who are asking for help, and this is where they are buried in England. Yeah, most of them, or all of them, or the casualties who could be found are now buried in England. They call it the Hollybrook Memorial. They are still there. And we have the two artifacts that we got from somebody from England in 1993. He visited the museum and was impressed by the maritime history, or what we are displaying here. So she donated these two. This is the porthole from SS Mendi. The porthole is the window of the ship. And this is silver salver. This is just a plate where they were served food that we have here. But interestingly, there were many items that were taken by divers from SS Mendi after the tragedy in 1917. Let me indicate that when there's an accident that happened in the sea and we have a shipwreck, people who are divers, who dive, they go underwater. Immediately the excitement goes out that the ship was carrying some precious cargo, gold, money, and the things that people want. And so divers would go there to harvest whatever that they can find from the ship. Now, with SS Mendi, it's the same thing. Many items were taken from it. And one of the most sought after items in a shipwreck is the bell. The bell in a ship is important for one important reason. It is the only item that is used to identify the ship. In those days, ships did not have any other number plate. Cars have number plates, but they have bells. So in the bell, it will be written the name of the ship, and this will be the only item where the ship's where the ship's name will be written on. The bell only. So this is one of the most sought after items. With SS Mendi, the bell was never found. With SS Mendi, the bell was never found. It only emerged in 2017, and an anonymous person made it available to a British radio station with a note that he must do the right thing, which we assumed as meaning that he must return it to South Africa. Fortunately, in 2018, the former British Prime Minister, Theresa May, brought the bell to South Africa in 2018. It is now kept by the presidency, and I'm hoping that they will bring it to this museum for conservation, because after all, we are the museum that tells the story. How has this history been memorialized or remembered? We remember the 607 black people who died from this tragedy as our heroes. Most people know S.E.K. Amaqhawe's poem, Imbongi Yase Tabozuko, who was active in recruiting Xhosa people, especially in this part of the province, to go and fight. They know his poem, Ukuzika kukaMendi, or Ukuchona kukaMendi, with the opening lines, asinithenganga ngazo izicengo bekungenganzuzo zimakhwezikhwezi bekungenganzuzo zingangenkwenkwezi. So the lines are along those lines. And so he presents them as people who were there to fight for liberation. And this is correct because this tragedy happened exactly 5 years after the formation of the ANC. And at the time, they strongly believed that Britain was going to liberate them from the South Africa's colonial government, which had taken the land from the natives or black people in 1913. So going there was to say to Britain, we have hopes in you. We are prepared to assist you in the war that you are engaging in return for our liberation. We do know that in 1914, they sent a delegation in England to appeal to the crowd, to the monarch. And another delegation was sent in 1917. So these people went there as heroes, went there as liberation, as fighters for freedom. Thank you.
Nizvele ke baphulaphuli bempuma Kapa, you heard it for yourselves. The rich history that we have in the Eastern Cape, the rich history that we have in the metro Butlindi has given you everything, the wealth of this historic liberation heritage that we have. That we have heroes that were there to defend this liberation that we attained later in our lives. We are walking in the steps of those heroes. They have died far away for many reasons. But one thing that we are celebrating them about is that they were heroes. He's told us about what we have in the bay, in the shores of the bay, that we have historical artifacts that are originally and linked to Mendi. We have the names, you can come and see them and identify your own that you can relate with. That sank in the Mendi, fighting for you. Take this opportunity, take this information and treasure it and keep it. We are thanking the Bay World for affording us as Amaqhawe Ethu this opportunity. We want to say, open the doors. The doors are open for people to come and experience this. We want to thank Mpumakapa, Bay TV, listeners of Obela, for giving us this attention so that we may share this liberation. Amaqhawe Ethu athi enkosi nangamso. Ndinguyongamela Manene, ndimele umonga ozikhali. Enkosi amakho.